Hello Precision Time customers. This video has been prepared primarily for our international customers using Precision Time. The topics that we will cover in this video will include the general interface of the Precision Time system to your existing scoreboard to properly toggle the clock. In addition, we will have separate sections covering the new 2019 requirement in the Euroleague and Eurocup competitions for integrating the data protocol from KStats to generate more accurate game files. The final section of this presentation will cover the internal clock setting for our customers who do not use the KStats data protocol and still want to generate a game file using our internal clock. All of the controls for the Precision Time base station are managed through the PTS 900 base station as shown. The ports for interfacing the PTS 900 base station with your scoreboard controller are found on the back face of the base station as shown. For virtually all of our international customers, we will be interfacing through the 5-pin DIN port 1 as circled for toggling the clock. Your kit should include two 5-pin DIN cables, one of a longer length with a straight connector that can be used for a direct connection to your controller, or if you need to use our relay box, we also include a shorter 5-pin DIN cable with the 90-degree connector angle as shown on the right. In your kit, we also do include an optional dry contact closure relay box as shown. This relay box uses 5-pin DIN connectors on both ends, but it is unidirectional, so make sure that on the PTS side it goes to the base station and then the clock output side goes to your scoreboard controller. So here you see side by side pictures of using either the angled 5-pin DIN cable into port 1 or the straight connection 5-pin DIN cable into port 1 depending on your specific needs. And in this final picture we show an example of having the relay box interface with the base station using the 5-pin DIN cable with the 90-degree connectors. Many of you will not need to have this relay box, but we've chosen to include this with all of our systems just as a precautionary measure so we don't have to send a separate shipment. Starting with the 2019-20 basketball season, the Euroleague is requiring that all teams competing in the Euroleague or Eurocup have their Precision Time systems be KStats capable. This will actually accomplish two important goals. The first being that we will generate more accurate game files because the game clock will actually be coming from the scoreboard controller. The other advantage of having the systems be KStats compatible is we no longer will have to require the timekeepers to reset an internal clock, which sometimes in the stress of the situation doesn't get done correctly. From a hardware standpoint, this will be accomplished by now splitting the signal that is coming from the data output side of your KStats interface module, as shown. For example, on this Mundo KStats box, the data output port is clearly marked. For other examples, such as Fozzy, you can see the output port is circled as shown. And for Stramatel, that port is actually identified as the clock data port. So to complete the KStats interface with Precision Time, we're first going to locate the data output cable and implement the DB9Y cable that should have come either with your system or with the upgrade when we returned your system for service. One end of the cable is going to then go to support the KStats computer as before. The other end of the cable is then going to either directly plug into the Precision Time base station, or by using a DB9 extension cable, will then plug into the COM1 port as shown. Also be prepared, if you're not seeing data initially, to implement the orange banded null modem adapter as shown, which will flip the two pins and allow the base station to properly see the incoming data. To make sure your base station is configured properly to read the KStats protocol, using the settings icon and then selecting clock configuration from the menu, and note that there is a password for entering clock configuration, we can actually go ahead and then the menu will come up as shown, and you notice that you want to select your clock type as Euro KStat. While you're in the settings mode, if you notice that the clock is toggling backwards when you do this initial setup, you can switch the SSRs 4 and 5 as shown to on, and that should allow you to toggle the clock in the correct direction. In other words, green is run and red is stop. Whenever you make any changes in this window, we recommend that you reboot the base station before continuing. So after rebooting the base station with KStat selected, notice that a new icon will appear in the upper right-hand corner of the window, which is the clock period selection icon. Unfortunately, the KStats protocol does not provide the period, so we need to enter that manually. So at the end of each period, your timekeeper will need to go in and move the period forward sequentially to the next period. So you see here in this example, we have our base station hooked up to a test fixture that was generously provided to us by Stramatel, including their KStats box as shown. And as I mentioned before, we have our Y cable in this case hooked up directly to the clock data. And so you see in there in this example, we've stopped the clock at 54.6 seconds, and now that exact time shows up in the view events portion of the main screen. We start the clock and run it for a couple seconds and then stop it as shown. You can see here now the time value of 52.1 seconds as shown here on the main screen, and that's also the exact time that is showing up on the Stramatel. So here's a checklist to work off of as you work towards implementing the KStats protocol. First of all, make sure that we're connecting COM1 from the Precision Time base station to the data output side of the KStats. Most of the situations we've encountered require the null modem adapter, so we suggest you implement that first. Make sure that in the clock configuration mode that you have the Euro KStat selected. Make sure you reboot the base station after making any software changes. And if you're still experiencing issues, try disconnecting the KStats computer so we can eliminate or identify that as a possible source of backfeed into the KStats setup. We will now review for our customers that are not using the KStats data protocol how to set up their base station to run an internal clock, which will provide an approximate clock value for each clock event during your game. To set up your base station to run an internal clock, through the clock configuration window, by tapping on clock type and scrolling through the menu, select internal clock from the options. Once you save changes and get out of the settings window, you need to reboot your base station before proceeding. So after rebooting the base station, setting up a new game, you'll notice now that there is the internal clock value shown in the main screen. You will now also see a new icon in the upper right hand corner of the touchscreen titled Edit Clock, and this is where you will set and also make changes to the internal clock setting throughout the game. So when we tap on the Edit Clock icon, it gets us into the control where we can set and adjust the internal clock value. You notice that we have icons titled Save as Default Time, which if you want to change the default time to the 10-minute period, which is the standard period length in international basketball, we select 10 minutes and then save as default time. And this is very useful because then anytime you start a new period, so for this example, we start the clock and run some time off, but then you notice if we go back into the edit clock mode, we can simply hit the reset to default time and it'll reset the clock back to the 10-minute value. Now, if you're in the middle of the period and a situation comes up where the referees ask for a clock correction, the numbers then can be selected individually by scrolling the various digits. So in this example, if we needed to reset the clock to 8:06, we can select the value and then simply hit Save Changes, and that will change the internal clock setting to the 8:06 that we wanted. We hope you found this presentation useful in helping you interface your new Precision Time system with your scoreboard controller, and where appropriate, also incorporating the K-Stats protocol. Please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team with any questions as you work towards completing this implementation for your club. For any additional questions about the contents of this presentation, please use the contact information shown above. We thank you again for your support of Precision Time.